Everything you know about Star Wars is wrong in this episode. Hyperspace is not sci-fi, and that's okay. Choco, why are we saying hyperspace is not sci-fi?
That's a literal quote from Pablo Hidalgo. Like he said that that Star Wars, that hyperspace works at the speed of plot. And when asked about time dilation, he said, "Now you're getting sci-fi into my Star Wars."
Yeah. And the reason we're talking about this is that oftentimes, especially more prevalent during the sequel trilogy, there was a lot of people talking about hyperspace rules. And then when Solo came out, there were even more people talking about hyperspace rules. And there's only ever been one rule of hyperspace. And you need precise calculations. That's it. It was set by Han Solo in A New Hope. Other than that, it's a fantasy thing, you know. The light speed skipping in The Rise of Skywalker, none of them were at locations with a gravitational body. The Typhonic Nebula, the mirror spires of Evexia, the Sinta Glacier.
We started at the Sinta Glacier,
yeah, which is a glacier, an asteroid. Doesn't have a gravitational body. And even if that were the case, where that they did that, if you read the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary, Rose actually made modifications to the Millennium Falcon for it to be able to jump to light speed out of gravitational bodies. So even then, there is an answer. But I think there was an instance in Rebels as well with Hera, right? Jumping to light speed.
Hera jumped into light speed in between two ships. We've seen it happen before hitting a ship. I mean, there's a lot of things that have played around with the rules of hyperspace, and also, if you play Star Wars Outlaws, it's amazing. You get to jump into a nebula, and you get to see what it's like and understand how that wouldn't be breaking any Star Wars rules if you jumped into a nebula and had to immediately dodge stuff in there. Also, I don't know why, but for a lot of people believed that hyperspace skipping was jumping randomly in hyperspace, which is not the case. It's jumping to a series of pre-programmed locations, and I thought that should be obvious because the name of it is meant to conjure your thought of skipping a rock across the pond. You know, that's what light speed skipping is.
I think the confusion comes from the fact that it is randomly through pre-programmed locations, not randomly jumping to random coordinates, right? So all of these paths and navigational computations are already there. It's just like, we'll go here, we'll go there, we'll go there. It's like if you were playing Outlaws, you would just be pressing X and choosing just a random location of a location that exists. So yeah.
And then that also brings us to the Holdo maneuver, which doesn't break Star Wars canon.
It's one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars, genuinely. I thought it was one of my favorite moments. It's like top 5 for me. Like when I think of like just spectacle based, it's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
As a with science being one of the things that I teach, I know what Pablo has said about getting sci-fi into your Star Wars, but having said that, you can still do it and be consistent about it if you want to. Like that's actually what's very interesting for me. So I exist in like 2 states when it comes to trying to figure out systems and rules in Star Wars as well. And like I've said, I am a GM for a Star Wars tabletop campaign as well, so I kind of have to do that. But bringing so the 2 states that I exist in regarding any scientific anything regarding Star Wars is it is a space fantasy, but if you are interested and curious enough, you can make it work scientifically as well. And it really just relies on your curiosity, because the writers are not trying to get it scientifically accurate. That's not a goal that they have. They're not trying to keep it scientifically consistent because, like, it's one of my favorite videos about a lightsaber. They figured out, like, if you ignited a lightsaber in real life, it would combust everyone in the room immediately upon ignition.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how much energy it needs to keep there, and it would just be hot all
Bro,
the time.
I lit thermite, and my friend lost his eyebrows. So.
Jeez. Okay, listen, we can talk about, like, your dangerous hobbies maybe a little later, but I think... Really? Did that happen?
But also, like you were saying, to kind of build off of what you're saying with the writers and stuff and fantasy, it's they can quickly change the rules.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's fine to do that.
They changed the rules with this entry in the visual dictionary. Rose Tico installed gravimetric compensators that allow the Falcon to more safely execute suborbital hyperspace jumps.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the change. That's the lore entry you need to understand how it works. Lightspeed skipping.
And it's like, it's cool if you don't like the change, right? Like, that's totally fine. If you want it to work somehow differently, that's great. But you can't really change what it is. If it's there, it's there. And you can't, like, no amount of saying that you don't like it is going to keep it from not being there. You can definitely, like, again, going back to tabletop vibes, if you want to play a tabletop where you don't have that rule in, that's your world. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actual Star Wars, it is there for you. So if someone is curious enough to be like, what is the rule behind this, like, thing about hyperspace? How does this work? That should really be the question you ask. Instead of immediately seeing something and going, I don't like that.
That doesn't work. You say, how?
You don't know. How does it work? Ask questions. Be curious. Be like inquisitive, you know? Isn't that like what Star Wars is supposed to be about? It's great.
Now, can I tell you about the thing that really, oh my God, it hurts my brain. Two things that people have said on a semi-regular basis has to do with the Holdo maneuver. One of them was, well, if this thing worked now, how come that's not the only thing they do in every situation? And you're like, well, first of all, and it hurts my brain because you're like, they don't only do space battles. Like, take the first episode of Rebels. Say they hyperspace jump into a ship. Well, there's no show. They don't recruit Wedge. They don't save these people. Like, first of all, you have a very, very finite amount of resources, for one. Number two, it's hard to pull off. Number three, it's really easy to guard against. And it's a Hail Mary. And the question to me is the equivalent of watching an NBA player, like, at the last second toss up a full court shot and makes it, and then you're like, well, why don't you just do that all the time?
The stars align, man. It happens.
You can't just what?
yeah I think the real thing, when people ask those questions, like why don't you do that all the time, at least it's a question, right? They're not dismissing it outright. At least it's like, why don't they do that all? It's a pretty accusatory question, but it's a question nonetheless. And then you can engage with it like that. The way that I like
they just
to
commit
engage,
suicide all the time. Good idea.
The question that I like to ask when people ask these questions is, I say, why do you think? How do you think it works? And just get people to actually engage before. Like, I know we're here talking about lore because we know what's going on, and like we've read the source material, we've seen all the movies, and we know like all the details and things. But for people who don't, I think it's a really productive exercise to get them to engage with themselves first and see if this is a good test to see if someone's really in good faith or not. And if you really want to engage with them further, if you turn the question on them and you go, what do you think? How do you think it works? And then have a discussion. It shouldn't be like, I think, as someone who knows quite a lot about Star Wars, I don't really like talking at people. I like talking to people. So as long as I can first gauge whether someone is in a position to talk about this with me, and then I'll continue. And the way that I do that is by asking them questions that they ask me.
No.
If someone comes to me and is like, how does this work? I say, how do you think it works? And then we talk about it. We can come to those conclusions with a conversation, because that's how narratives work as well.
And that's one of kind of our core tenets is, at least for myself, always engage in good faith at the beginning. Assuming it's in good faith. I'm like, I've seen some stuff, but I'm gonna give you the chance, man.